Hey, and welcome to the Tesla Owners Club Ontario podcast. My name's Josh.
And I'm John.
And this is episode
3.
Oh, I thought it was 4, man. I messed up.
You wish.
Dang it. Today is I actually am excited about today's episode. John's leaving soon, so we're trying to get a couple episodes recorded real fast. But I found this really cool thing at John's house, and so we're going to use it today. What's this thing called?
I have no idea. It's some sort of drum thing.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we'll use it a lot, but it's
Just
here.
again,
It's here if we need it.
For no apparent reason.
Today we're like the first part of this podcast. We're going to get right out of the way just because we got a really great interview. We want to talk to you about some. We got a guy on who has some cool stuff to say, and I'm not going to tell you who it is. John will tell you.
So coming up after some of our updates, we have one of the original Roadster owners here in Canada, a chap named Jeff Stevenson, who's also been part of our club since its inception. And as I mentioned, I think in the past, I just thought it'd be kind of interesting to hear some of the original pioneers back in the day, what caused them to want to buy something like a Roadster and some of the trials and tribulations and things like that. So I think you'll find it very interesting.
So stay tuned for that. I have a question. How long has he been a member? How many years?
Well, we said March 13 was when the club was started. You know, we were unofficial back then, so that's 7 years. Coming up 7 years this next month.
So does he get anything like a watch or?
I didn't get anything.
Just saying. All right, so we're getting right into the. I'm going to call this the TOCO Tatway. I think it's Tesla Owners Club Ontario tip of the week.
I got more than one tip. How many do you want?
I got a couple, but I'm going to give you guys one. You go first, though.
Okay, so the one thing I don't know, have you enabled detection in your car yet?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So if you're not aware, I think almost all Teslas now have the ability to text. And you've just got to make sure that it's set up correctly. So I'm going to just read this right off. I found this on the internet. To enable the voice to text feature, go to your car, tap on the Bluetooth icon, select a device, and you should see a toggle there to sync messages. So you've got to make sure that's clicked over so it's highlighted in blue, and make sure your phone's connected, obviously, through Bluetooth, and now you'll be able to see their messages. And I didn't realize it's a little bit different because I just got my Model X. It comes up on that little screen to the left of your main screen in your Model 3, but it comes up on the main screen behind the steering wheel on the Model S and the Model X, so it's pretty cool.
Which seems pretty good. That's tip number 1. Thank you. What's your other tip?
Well, I got a whole bunch. What if you want to delete an address? Maybe you've got 500 addresses that you've gone to in your nav and you want to get rid of those.
Mm-hmm. I have that problem.
Easy way to do that is all you need to do is tap on the address, touch it basically, and swipe right. And you can get rid of addresses in your nav.
This is why I love the UX designers at Tesla. They're very intuitive to what people who already use phones. It's basically the same type of navigation in phones, like especially in Android and Apple where you swipe right, swipe left on things. Next, I bet you it's going to be 3D touch like you can see on the Apple phone.
Yeah, it's hopefully instinctive because of that. I've got another couple quick ones. Share an address to your Tesla. So if you use Google Maps, if you use Waze, and if you're like me and you want to see what the traffic's like and you're going somewhere before you actually leave, you have a look. And all you need to do basically is go to your phone, go to Waze, go to Google Maps, find it, and then go to press share on the bottom of that map. And if it's your Tesla icon is not right there, you go to more and you find the Tesla icon and you click on that and it'll share and it'll send that address right to the nav in your car. And I've used that more than once. It's pretty convenient.
Very convenient. You know what? My tip is I have a couple too. Mine kind of goes into that. You know that if you set your departure at 7 a.m., like I do, it'll prep your car. So if you go to the charging app in your car, you can actually set the time that you leave. And it knows then depending on the weather and everything else, to set your car to be warmed up, ready to go. If you didn't know that, it's very simple. You should use that feature.
I think you can also set it up, and I don't use this because my time leaving in the morning varies, but you can set it up so that it'll learn the time you leave. And I forgot the setting, but be ready to go if you always leave at 7 or 7:30, and you can set it up that it'll do that every time for you. Did you also know that if you set up home and work in your nav, and if you want to go home, all you got to do is go to the nav button and swipe to the right, and it'll automatically put your home address in. People might say, well, don't you know how to get to your home address? Well, I do it almost all the time now because of the traffic and the navigation system. It's going to advise you if there's any problems or delays, and it's going to do a detour. And if you're already at home and you swipe to the right, it'll take you to work.
Well, here's the thing. Mine does it automatically because it knows where I'm going, but I've been doing a test for the past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Not every day, but I wanted to see, on average, I've been taking the Tesla Nav to work and opening the Waze app on my phone. And the Waze app will be sometimes 5 minutes slower than the Tesla nav.
Really?
Okay. And because it's taking me in a different direction. So I always loved the Waze app because it's real-time nav, it's real-time peer-to-peer traffic, which the Tesla sort of does as well. Not sure who it piggybacks off of. It's Google because Waze is owned by Google.
It is, yeah.
So I did a test. And all the times that I chose the Tesla nav, it was right on the button to the minute, getting to work within 5. And if I would have taken the Waze direction, I would have been 5 minutes longer. 5 minutes longer.
What do you have it set to reroute you if you can save more than so many minutes? Do you know? 5 minutes. Okay, I put mine on 2. That sounds a little bit extreme. Yeah. But I will tell you, I used to do the same thing. And I don't know when it was, a year or two ago, is when the Tesla navigation sort of lined up with Waze. Because in the past, you couldn't rely on the Tesla nav with the traffic awareness and the
it'd be interesting to see if they're piggybacking off of it because it is actually really accurate.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's tips. Well, just kidding.
Well, the other thing is, maybe not tips, but a couple of updates ago, we now have way more voice commands available in the car.
I love
all our cars, and I've only used some of them. But up until then, you really couldn't do too much. Play a certain song, navigate to, things like that. And now, and so I got this off the internet. I'm going to say that some of the other clubs and groups have put some great lists together. But there's some on here that I just found. I'm trying to talk into the mic and read at the same time. Josh always makes me talk like 1 inch away from the mic here. But you can do things like adjust passenger seat heater to 3 bacon strips.
I love it.
And it's going to go to 3.
Yeah.
You can do, somewhere in here I saw wipers calm down. So, I mean, there's the obvious ones like wipers decrease speed or wipers increase speed, but wipers calm down and they'll slow down.
If you say Tesla, it's too cold, it'll increase by what, 1.5 or something?
You can say on an S and an X, you can say, my hands are cold. And it'll turn up the heat. So, I need to show these to my wife because she's still a holdout. I've got a Model Y in order that I would love for her to take. And she finds the screens too confusing. And how do I get to different menus? Almost every single thing that you want to do in the car can now be done by voice. And this is only after a couple of months.
Yeah.
And there's
Take
people
advantage of these things. Learn these things.
And there's people out there that they're discovering more and more all the time. And they're adding it.
And there's Easter eggs we don't even know about yet.
Exactly. So what else?
So today we're talking about paving the way. And I know I've given homage to those. We've got a great guest on today, but let's talk about where Tesla all started.
Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm probably going to be wrong.
We've been talking about this offline, but Josh, I have to agree. It sounds real, but it sounds real. We're talking here. We don't want to have everything right down perfect to a T because then it sounds too clinical.
Well, this is actually how I learn. So I might say something wrong. You correct me. I learn.
Okay.
And then I do this. And then I've accepted.
I almost swore into the microphone.
Okay, so here's what I know that I researched today. Tesla started by these two dudes, one guy named Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning.
Right.
And then Elon came in. They needed some cash.
That was like 04 or something.
Yeah, way back in the day. 03. Founded in 2003. So Elon came in with some cash and said, here's 30 mil.
Yeah, that was about
a big falling out.
05 or 06, took some of his PayPal money. And I think he was interested in electrical transport anyhow and did a bit of research on electric cars and heard about this startup called Tesla and came in as like an angel investor and gave them $30 million.
And then they kind of, they had beef and then he took over. Basically, is a long story short.
Yeah, we're giving you a very long story short.
Very, very cliff note thing. And then on June 29th, 2010, Tesla Motors launched its initial public offering on NASDAQ. 13,300,000 shares of common stock were issued to the public at a price of $17 per share.
$17.
And now it closes at close to $850.
Yeah, and to be fair, they did some other things. I can't remember the time frame, but they borrowed from the U.S. government about $450 million. And some people held that against Tesla because the government also lent, and bailed out basically Chrysler and GM and all these people. But I believe that Tesla is one of the only ones, first of all, the earliest one that paid out their loan very quickly. And some of the other companies may not have even paid out their loan.
Yeah, they're probably bankrupt since then.
Yeah.
Well, and then they obviously launched the S, then they launched the X, then they launched the 3, which according to cleantechnica.com, Tesla M3 now holds more value than any other car
after a year. It's only been out a little over a year, but I think it only loses. I think their stats said only 5% loss from MSRP after a year. year.
Crazy.
And
you get 10% loss of MSRP when you drive off a lot in most cars.
More than that, frankly.
It's more than that. It's more than that.
The average depreciation on a car is 20 to 30% in the first year.
Oh my goodness.
But let's not kid ourselves. I don't think it's going to stay forever. I think it bodes well for Tesla in general. I think it's because of the tech, because of the style, because of everything that Tesla's doing right now. But I also think because of supply. There's very few used Tesla Model 3s on the market. It's people like me who had the rear-wheel drive for 4 months, and then the all-wheel drive came out, and then, I want the all-wheel drive, and moved my rear-wheel drive.
Yeah.
And then the all-wheel drive performance came out, which I took, and I had that for a year in conjunction with a Model X, and I decided after a while that was a little bit extreme. So I let that go after a year. So there's lots of people, fortunately for people that want to buy used, that move their cars periodically.
Well, I wouldn't say lots, but...
Sorry.
A few.
Good point. There's enough that it's caused a market for them to then do a study and find out that it holds really good resale value. So I think that bodes very well for the marketplace.
And then Model Y announced is the poor man's Model X, which is...
and I don't know if you saw this.
Do you know what the pre-orders for the Model Y?
I don't know. I tried to do some research today. Their numbers, no one knows because, the only thing...
50,000 is what I got.
Yeah, well, I think it's more than that. I would say 50 to 100,000. No one knows for sure. I mean, they were fairly transparent and told us the Model 3 back in the early days, and also the Cybertruck. But
250,000, by the way, for the Cybertruck.
But I don't know if you know this. Did you see today that people in the U.S. are now getting delivery emails for the Model Y?
Yes, and they're all excited, and they're all can't sleep. It's Christmas morning.
Apparently, it seems from the emails that are flying around and all the information on the internet is that it's the performance all-wheel drive Model Y first, and the first date we've seen for delivery, the earliest, it looks to be about March 15th. But typically, they've delivered to previous Tesla owners first. That seems to be the case to some extent, but not always, and typically to California first, and that's not always the case. And now apparently there's people who've ordered not that long ago, and there's people on the East Coast. Typically in Canada, our vehicles have been about 6 months behind the launch in the U.S.
Yep.
So my Model S Signature was 6 months behind the first Signature delivery in the States. The X was the same, about 6 months behind, and the 3 was almost exactly the same. And sometimes that's for homologation, which is to meet standards for the government and the requirements in the country, but also supply and demand. They're going to sell them where the biggest market is first, and that's normally California.
You think the Y is going to be the biggest seller, or the 3 is going to command the market for the lion's share of the market for the recent future?
Overall, I think the 3 will still command the sales. It's going to take quite a while. Obviously, it's because it's been on sale for almost 2 years now. Model Y, not everybody wants an SUV or a CUV, as they call it. It's a little bit more money, but I think there's going to be a ton of those delivered. They're all over the place now, as we've discussed and seen, but it's pretty exciting. I don't think anybody expected to see them in the middle of March. And, what I'm trying to get at is, will it be 6 months before we see our cars? Is it going to be like October? I don't know. My gut says, what's the date today? February 25th, we're actually recording this. Hopefully it'll be out in a few days. I think we'll see them in Canada earlier than 6 months. I'm going to stick my neck out and say July. Okay?
I'm going to say June.
Okay. June and July is when we say Model Y.
The best
hold us to that.
Just kidding. And you know what? The beautiful thing about all this, and just as a Tesla owner and a fan, is that if you think about this car company in the timeline of car companies, this thing is a toddler. Not even. It's a baby. It's a baby.
They've only actually been selling cars, physically delivering cars, since 2008.
And you think about what it's accomplished in that amount of time. Can it all be attributed to Elon, or are we saying he built the right team?
I think everybody worships Elon, myself included. He's got his, deficiencies, but he's basically a genius. But I think we have to, you mentioned the names of those people. Those are the guys that back in the day that went out and researched, and they found, I forgot the name of the car, but they found another car that they thought they could put an electric powertrain in to test it. And they were the ones that sort of garnered the initial interest, and Elon came along with his money and ultimately his genius. But, we talked in the past about early adopters and pioneers, and we're going to have one of the early adopters and pioneers on our podcast here very shortly in a couple of minutes. But I would say the lion's share to Elon. But if people hadn't started it up back in the day, he wouldn't have had anything to invest in and take it to the next level. So
cool. That's just a little history if you didn't know. A lot of tips. let's get into the interview.
Okay.
Who do we have?
So coming up next, we have a gentleman by the name of Jaff Stevenson. And Jaff and I were involved with the club back in day one. We're at the very first meetings that we put on back in March of 2013. And he's going to talk to us today primarily about the Roadster. And I'm not going to steal his thunder, but he was one of the original Roadster owners in Canada. So without further ado, let's move to the next section of our podcast. So I've got Jaff Stevenson here, as I mentioned, and Jaff and I go way back. We're actually original members of the Owners Club. Jaff was one of the first members back in probably our first meetings were, what did I say, March of 2013. Yeah. And we're going to talk about Roadster. Jaff had a Roadster for how long, Jaff?
Headed from 2010 to 2016.
Awesome. So 6 years. So we're going to talk mostly about that today because I thought it'd be very interesting for some of you, especially new owners, to learn about what went on back in the day with people getting the very first Tesla that was for sale. But Jaff and I have a very similar background. We met back then and we both had bought Signature Model S P85s and had those for a couple of years. And then when they brought out the all-wheel drive P85D, we both pulled the trigger around the same time and watched for our cars when they were going to be shipped. Remember that debacle when they had new seats with wraparound bolsters and whatnot? And there was all kinds of problems that we were waiting for our cars and the seats weren't ready and they shipped the cars with the old seats. And then we took it in and we got the new seats retrofitted. And that was the day where we found out that there was going to be a heated steering wheel on the car. It wasn't really announced. All of a sudden, people noticed. Remember?
Yeah, I got it. You didn't.
Who's going to get the heated steering wheel? Who wasn't? So I didn't get mine, and Jaff did.
I did.
Who's had more Teslas?
Me.
You got to be.
Well, we're on when we get our Model Y, we'll be on our seventh.
Yeah.
I think
You're not far behind.
Yeah. 6. Yeah. I'm on one of many.
You'll get there. We're also a little bit older than you. There's some gray hair on this side of the room.
This is true.
So what I thought we'd do is just talk to you, Jaff, and try to find out what went through your mind. You had a 2010. The Roadster came out in 2008. We were talking before this. It was supposed to come out in 2006, at Tesla time. And back in those days, there were some real challenges getting this whole program off the ground. Many of you may not know, but the body and the chassis was based on a Lotus, I think a Lotus Elise.
Correct.
And they were brought over here and then they married the powertrain, the batteries, and the motors to the cars. There were lots of challenges. So, but Jaff, what went through your mind? How did you hear about Tesla and what intrigued you enough to sort of ultimately buy a Roadster and take that journey? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we'd gone down to the auto show in February of that year to look for an all-wheel drive vehicle for my son, some sort of entry-level vehicle. And the very first booth inside the auto show was a Toronto Star, and they had an orange Roadster there. So because of the look of it, et cetera, not even knowing when I approached it really that it was electric, I decided to go over and speak with the guy a bit and found out a little bit about it and was talking to him about the impracticality of the car. When he convinced me to I said, you really have to go on the website and take a look at the sedan. So when we got home that night,
This is 2010.
2010.
And they just brought the beta version of the S, was now out, and we'd seen what it was going to look like.
No, this is actually prior to that. This is actually February 2010 at the auto show. So there was no beta of the S available to see. So we were just going off pictures, and at that time it was a $5,000 deposit. You had to wire down to them. Took a look at it, and my wife works in environmental. Monday I wired it down, got home, and said, I've put us on the waiting list for an electric car. So she thought that was kind of interesting, took a look at it, was fully supportive of it, obviously.
After the fact, that's how I operate
after
too.
the fact, that's right.
How I operate.
Ask forgiveness, not permission.
So we were the 5th on the waiting list in Canada for the Model S. And
Roadster?
No, for the Model S.
Oh, okay.
And what happened was Hans Olsrud at the time was the only sales rep in the Toronto area. And we thought it'd be really nice to get a ride in a Roadster, and being that we're Model S reservationists, perhaps they'll take us out. I don't think Hans really wanted to take us out because there was myself who had a reservation and 3 other guys with us who did not, and really probably weren't that keen on it. But anyway, Hans took me out. We rode around a little bit and had a great time, and said, if you want, you can lease a Roadster or buy a Roadster and turn it back in when your S is ready, and they'll give you a good deal on it. So I started working on my wife probably around June of that year. And about September the 21st, it took me about 3 months to get her to cave, and finally got the order in just prior to a price increase that was coming with it. So from about September the 30th till December the 21st, when it arrived, I probably had about 5 hours of sleep. I was just so excited every night. That's all you could think about.
To all the husbands out there who are trying to convince their wives to let them get a Tesla, what does that sequence look like? What do we start with? How does it work? How do you wear them down?
Well, I think I'm lucky because, again, my wife worked in environmental, so I think I was halfway there.
Yeah.
Because originally I thought, well, maybe a Porsche, maybe an older Ferrari. But a friend of mine who fixed cars talked me out of the Ferrari. He said it would cost you more money keeping the thing on the road than it would to buy it.
Yeah.
The Porsche, I love the 911s. I know, John, you were into Porsches. I thought that was probably what it was going to be. And then my wife kind of put her foot down and said, no, we're not doing that. So it was a lot harder for her to put her foot down when this vehicle was electric. Yeah. So it took some time, but it wore down. Persistence pays off. That's all I can say.
Well, and you had an advantage because you already went through that with the S. So you put your deposit on the S based on pictures and specs.
Absolutely.
But you'd seen the Roadster at that point at the auto show?
I'd seen the Roadster, right. And then by the time I really started to work on Cindy, I'd actually had a ride in it. Hans wouldn't let any of us drive, but he took us out for a ride, and it was just...
So the electric sort of commitment had already been made. It was a matter of going for this. How much was it back then?
Well, the base model started at 120 Canadian, and the S, I'm trying to think what they called the high version of it now. It was 25,000 more. So that car totaled out about 168,000. It was.
You had some other. Did you? Oh, you put some things on it after the fact.
What I did was after the first year when my wife wouldn't see the bill anymore, I added the carbon fiber interior, which is another $10,000.
And did you change the top too? I can't remember.
I did buy in from another Tesla Roadster owner a carbon fiber hardtop, right, which I put on in the wintertime because I drove it all year round. Yeah. And it made a significant difference to the warmth of the car having that hardtop on. Right. So it was a good investment, but I only had that for 2 years when I drove it in the wintertime. The rest of the time I was just with the rollback soft top.
And going back to our episode 1, he leased it. So
yes,
made it a lot affordable. It was just monthly cash flow.
Yeah, I was, again, to be an independent business owner, it made the lease possible. Now, that did come back to bite me in the end because I had the GVA 005 green plate, and of course, that was registered to the company. When I sold the company, they would not let me transfer the plate out of the company name. So now that plate sits on my in my garage. I can't have it on the car, which is a real disappointment.
What's the tech inside of a Roadster look like compared to today's tech?
Ancient. It was great. Like at the time, it was space age. You look at it now, and that was one of the things that actually did lead me to move the Roadster in favor of the Model S. I traded it, or basically did a courtesy trade. P90D with Ludicrous. Was the performance of the P90D with Ludicrous was significantly better. I think it was 3.7 seconds 0 to 100 in the Roadster. Although the Roadster was certainly much different looking car and attracted a lot more attention. That's not really why I had the car. I wanted that time the performance, and knowing that these newer cars were going to be blowing by me on the road. That was one thing that was in the consideration. That and the fact that parts probably were going to start to get a little thin, and not being much of a do-it-yourselfer, that wasn't in the cards to hold it long term. So.
And for those who don't know, I think the total number worldwide was only about 2,500 Roadsters were sold. Wow. From 2008 to 2010, right? 2010 was the last year. And was yours a 2.0 or 2.5?
Mine was a 2.5. I'd ordered just when they'd come out with the 2.5 release, so I got the...
That was like updates, so they had like 1.5, 2.0, and then 2.5,
the 1.5 had the 2-speed transmission that was locked in first because, of course, the electric motors kept blowing them up. The 2.0 had a different front end. It had the older style front end, and there was really just cosmetic changes between the 2.5 and the 2.0. I think the 5 looked a little nicer. A friend of mine in Ottawa, Doug George, he ordered in June. I ordered in September. Doug was one of the last production runs of the 2.0. So
I remember his car. He had a red one, didn't he?
He had a red one, yeah. He wasn't too happy about that, but I think Tesla looked after him in another way.
Did you ever hear How many Roadsters were actually sold in Canada total?
It depends on who you ask. It was somewhere between 55 and 53. So there were not many, and mine was the only Arctic White 2.5 Sport. That's the term I was looking for before the Sport. So it had a hand wound motor as opposed, so it did a little more horsepower than what the regular one had.
You ever passed another Tesla Roadster while you had yours?
Yeah. In fact, I found a buddy of mine who I used to play computer baseball with, who worked at he was employee number 9 at BlackBerry. Onid Sinha had an orange one, and I'd kind of lost track with Onid for a few years. And a mutual friend of ours said, Onid's retired now, and he just drives around in his Tesla. And I said, Onid's got a Tesla. So I rang him up, and we met 2 or 3 times per year after that at different shows and that sort of stuff.
And did you drag race each other?
No, because I didn't want to put him to shame.
What a waste.
But he still might have that car.
He does.
I remember at the barbecue 2 years ago, I think he was there.
Absolutely.
And, who knows how many there are. I tried to ask somebody at Tesla today. They haven't answered me yet how many are left in Canada. But there's probably a good 20 or 30 of those left.
I would think
items now, right?
You couldn't basically, you couldn't import them until 2013 when Canada, the governing body, finally gave them a number where you could bring them in.
Right.
For the longest time, people were trying to bring them in from the U.S. and of course they weren't allowed to.
Right.
There's a chap in Montreal. I think he had to pay about $3,000 up and above to Canadianize it, so that Transport Canada would allow it to run. But how many there are now, I have no idea.
What's the range on the Roadster?
Well, that was one of the things that made it very easy to drive. It was a full range charge at 100% was 385 kilometers,
really?
which is
10 years ago.
Excellent. 53 to 55 kilowatt hour battery. Some of it was used up for systems, so it didn't have the full amount for drive.
The car is so much lighter than
exactly. It was 2,700 pounds, and it was the batteries are roughly 1,000 pounds, so it didn't have much other to go. So that I didn't get a lot of the early stage range anxiety because I could travel from where we lived to my folks' cottage, didn't have to stop anywhere to charge. Not that there would have been many places to stop back then anyway, but you had a nice level of comfort with it. So.
And that segues into the question. Like back in the day, when did the supercharging network even happen in Canada?
Well, it didn't matter because the Roadster could not supercharge. So you were high level 2 is basically all you could do. The first superchargers,
they were announced just after we ordered our SIGs or got our SIGs.
Mm-hmm.
So I was telling on the last podcast that the first 6 months we had our cars, we didn't even know there was going to be a supercharger network. So it was sometime, I want to say later in 2012 that they announced them, I think, and they probably didn't start to show up until 13. I don't know when they showed up in Canada, but we talked about how for many, many months and a year or two, everybody was complaining, when are we going to get more superchargers? And then a bunch of them popped up in places we didn't even expect. So,
no question. Cool. But
so tell us some of the good and the bad about the Roadster, trials and tribulations. Remember, the little Tranmere Road had a tiny little Tesla service facility that many of us used even in the early days of the Model S. Had a 3 or 4 bay shop and some great guys back in the day, Eli and people like that helped us all out. But tell us about servicing the car, some of your road trips and your challenges charging and whatnot.
Well, servicing the car was great because, being down in Niagara, I'd always schedule my appointments for a Friday afternoon. So I'd say, okay, I'm going in to get the car serviced, which really wasn't that often. But it was a nice drive to take out and get out of the office and do a bit of early weekend cheating on it. There were times when there were 2 or 3 other Roadsters in there and you had to leave yours out front, and of course they would do the same thing back then. They would get you a courtesy trade, so that was good. Really wasn't a heck of a lot that went wrong on it. One of the probably the most common things I was up for was it had a hatch release in the rear, one on each side, and sometimes they'd get out of sync. So one would fire and the other one wouldn't, and of course you couldn't get the back hatch
open. Engine bay?
Or no, this is the storage bay, which also was the engine bay. Remember, right? So if you were, you learned a few tricks on that. If one hitch was working funny, you just lean on the other one and hold it down so it would still fire, but it wouldn't come flying up and bind the other one from opening up. But there were minor little things, really outside of probably. I can't even think of anything major. The only major thing happened when I was out on the East Coast with the Amazing Race when the inverter blew up. And
let's back up. Tell us about the Amazing Race first, and then we'll get into that.
Well, the Amazing Race was put on by Sun Country Highway, and it was It was started when they had their level 2 charging network literally all across Canada. So they decided to have this contest where they would have people drive across Canada. You would get points for stopping at these charge stations. The more points you got, obviously, the better you did. And it ended at Summerside, PEI. Well,
you drove from here to there.
I did. I took about 3 or 4 days and drove around Ontario because it was still by far the most number of charge stations were here, and then planned out a route to drive out east, go around Gaspé, etc., and end up in Summerside.
And these were typically 50 and maybe 80 amp chargers.
You were lucky
then, right?
if you found some of them were 80s, which was great, but there were 40s. I can remember pulling into Miramichi in the wee hours of the morning, probably 4 o'clock, just dead tired. Got out, plugged in, went back in the car, and fell asleep because I slept in the car.
And back then you can't watch Netflix while you charge.
No.
How many kilometers an hour would you be getting on a 40 amp in your Roadster?
I can't even think. Probably in the 30s, I'm guessing. I don't even remember. It's that long ago.
30 kilometers an hour in charge.
Yeah, I was there for a long time, but it was chilly, so I went back in the car and went to sleep, and of course the interior of the car all fogged up. Well, I woke up probably around 7:38, and the charge station was actually right beside the town hall, which was not. It was an old house at the time, and I started using my hand on the window and clearing the screen. Looked out, there was about 40 people outside to get in, trying to figure out.
What's this car outside with all the windows fogged up doing in our parking lot?
I'm having a look at the picture of the Arctic White Tesla Roadster. And to this day, it's still sexier than most cars on the road.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, it was a great looking
amazing
car.
machine.
Yeah. One of the other big downsides of it was the original Tesla time, and not meaning from when Tesla says they're going to have something ready to when they deliver, but when you go down to the supermarket to get a loaf of bread and some milk and that sort of stuff, and you come back 2.5 hours later, and your wife gives you grief and says, "Where they each were you?" And I eventually had to take Cindy out a couple times shopping in it, and just to show her that this is what happens. And there was
Did she drive it ever?
She drove it twice. Once on the test drive. It had some really severe blind spots.
Okay.
And of course, she's even shorter than I am, so she did not enjoy driving. She loved driving in the car, but did not like driving it, which was fine with me because I'm a lousy passenger. I would much rather be the driver of the car. So I did the majority of the driving.
So when you think about when Jeff talking about Tesla time, and as he said, not Tesla time waiting for things, but Tesla time that you had to spend answering questions about your car. Right. What is it?
Yeah.
And, even though it was based in a Lotus, and, if you didn't know much, you can't really tell the difference between a Lotus Elise and a Roadster, but a Lotus Elise were very rare regardless.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then when they hear the thing moving with no engine sound, just unbelievable. I'm sure the questions you used to get.
I've got a good story about that. I was getting the car looked at in the parking lot by one of the Rangers, Mark Lidstone, and back then they had a huge trailer, an enclosed trailer that said Tesla on the side of it, that they would pull around with their pickup truck to service the Roadsters in the field. So Mark's putting an update. He's got his computer out. It's attached to the car. He's putting it in. The Tesla trailer's parked right beside my car, and this lady comes walking by, going to the bank, looks at the car and says, "Nice Lotus." The Tesla on the trailer was probably 3 feet tall, and it still was nice Lotus.
But again, we need to think about. I remember when I got, and probably the same as you with your Model S, it was like a show car back then. Nobody, what is this concept car? Nobody had seen a car. Tesla, what's a Tesla? So imagine 2 years prior to that, the average person, unless you were a total car fanatic, had no idea what Tesla was, no idea where it was made, let alone that they had this little sports car and didn't know anything about the concept of the company. So
I think as Tesla goes on with their newer models, I'm sure the surprise factor and the cachet factor for the 3 was far less than the X. The X probably would have been about the same as the S, which would have been about the same as the Roadster.
Right.
As we get into more vehicles out there that look more normal for Tesla when the Y is out and a few others, I guess it'll change with the Cybertruck, but it's a good thing, I think, that we don't get asked so many questions because that means more people know about it.
But Cybertruck, I can imagine the first ones on the road, and also Roadster.
Yeah.
We're going to see some of those in another year or two. So tell us a little bit more about that trip.
Well, so with the trip, somehow that year it had ended up that my wife had used up all her vacation, and I still had 2 or 3 weeks left. So Stephen B. from Sun Country was riding me. He said, "Look, there's not very many people doing this because it's fairly difficult to do. Why don't you do it?" So I thought about it for a couple of days and thought, this is going to be great. I'm going to enjoy doing this. So I did it on my own, planned out the route, got all the way around. This was 2013. This was September. December. So there were a few chilly nights in Quebec and a couple white knuckle stretches between Rivière-du-Loup and Fredericton, Moncton, etc. You, as a backup, looked and saw where the campgrounds were, and kept the yellow pages handy to see if you needed a welding shop. Because the one thing, I always had a big basket of adapters, and I still to this day have them. They're the ones I had for my Model S when we sold those. I've hung on to those just
Tell
in
me
case.
why you need a welder.
Well, welding plug and EMA 650. We used those when we were driving around in Newfoundland with our Model S. We had 2 welding shops. We charged that, and the people couldn't have been nicer to help you out. But if you didn't have that, it's a different
special electrical system they're using for arc welders and things like that.
Yeah.
Oh,
so you can get a 50
what would
amp
have
charge.
happened if you did back in the day run out? Like you have to find a house to let you plug in for
Basically, you would have to do that. I did have
2 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, I did have one time when I was going from Guelph back up to the cottage near Kincardine, where my sister had an emergency with her car, so I ran them down to Guelph, didn't charge up, and I ended up with about 135 kilometers to go, and I had 110 in the battery. So I basically put the windows up, turned everything off. The Mennonites were passing me with their horse and buggies. I was doing about 40 kilometers, but I got home with 15 on the good side. That was actually a great learning experience of seeing what effect it had on your range by simply slowing down.
Yeah.
Now, you couldn't have done that on the 4-lane highways, but on 2-lane highway going up north, it was not that big a deal.
I feel like you pull up to someone's house. Do you mind if I stay here for 3 days?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Well, when I used to drive to the cottage, we at the time we only had the 15 amp, so you'd plug in on Friday, and by the time you were ready to go home on Sunday at end of a typical weekend, you were fully charged. So,
that's cool. Yeah. Very cool.
So, I mean, really, the reason we had Jeff on the show is we talk about pioneers, and there was pioneers back in 2008. Down in the States. I'm sure there was a few people in Canada, 2008, 2009, but here's one of the pioneers for Tesla and electric cars. And I think it's important that, you heard some of the stories. And as Josh has said before, not to sort of sound glib or anything, but if it wasn't for people taking the Roadster, then the Model S and ultimately the Model X, the Model 3 and the Model Y and all these other vehicles wouldn't exist. Yeah. So leap of faith, wing and a prayer that we did this. Again, when you're talking about pioneers, Jeff mentioned Sun Country Highway, who put a network right across Canada of level 2 chargers. So tell us a little bit about, I think it was Kent, right? The owner of that company?
Yeah, Kent was a really interesting guy. I don't know really how his business model worked, but what Kent was able to do was find hosts all across Canada, myself included in my business, to hang one charger off the back, whether with whatever power you could spare to go out to it. I only had a 40 amp behind my office. It was an older building. That's all that would work. And then put them on this great interactive map for the time. So you could literally go on your computer, take a look, find the location, see what kind of charge station it was. It wasn't as fancy as PlugShare, where you could tell if someone was already using it, but at least you knew it was there. Did run into a tough situation and a bit of a learning experience, again, in New Brunswick, where I was kind of relying on a charge station late at night, only to discover that it was inside the bay of one of the dealerships, which is where I learned pretty quickly that when you had other dealers talking about, or other manufacturers talking about putting charge stations in dealerships, so unless that is just not going to work unless they have public access to them 24/7. But that stuff happens. But Kent was really driving force in getting that charge network all across Canada.
And pretty interesting. He actually branded the chargers with his own name, Sun Country Highway, right on the chargers, Clipper Creeks that he branded. And did he not provide the charger?
Yeah,
for free.
So who's this guy?
Yeah.
I want to meet this guy.
Kent Rothwell. Again, if you heard this, reach out to us, but he'd probably be somebody good to get on our podcast. Yeah. But he was original pioneer trying to help with the charging network across Canada. He would convince, as Jeff said, people with business owners and motels and restaurants to put these chargers in. And at the time, there was hardly any electric cars that existed. Roadster, was Leaf even out?
The Leaf was out. The Model S was out because there was a Model S in that, but it was still very new. But there were not many. It was pretty thin.
But now you can go across Canada on V3. Am I right?
Yeah.
Well, V3 from Ontario West, and I don't know if they have V3s very, very, very much from sort of Ontario East, but I don't want to deviate too much here, but we are going to have a meeting next week, and I mentioned this in our first podcast with the head of the supercharging team for Canada is going to be at our meeting, and the timing is not going to work. This podcast will probably come out before we can talk about that. But he had mentioned to me today that you're going to see V3 ultimately is the only thing they're going to be doing across
makes
Canada.
Sense. And then V4 in the next, 5 years?
But again, think about that. So 20, 30, 40 amp chargers back in the day that only got you, was coincidentally the 20, 30, 40 kilometers per hour of charge.
Which is what we basically get in our garages right now.
Yeah.
Right.
And now V3s, I saw somebody post the other day, something like 1,600 kilometers an hour on a Model 3. Mm-hmm. We'll get more into this down the road. Model 3 has a different charging system that can accept much higher power and get a much faster charge than an S or an X. But just unbelievable.
Well, there's an interesting segue. So you got a Roadster, and then you went with an S, and then was it
another S?
And then you got another S. Then you had an X, I imagine.
No, never had.
You never had the X.
No.
Does it irk you a little bit that guys like me who pull up into a 3, finally, I get all the bells and whistles and everything you never got getting into it. Does it irk you a little bit?
No, not at all. I mean, it's a victory. It's a victory because I don't care what EV you buy, just buy an EV and get it on the road.
It's a good attitude.
And we shouldn't feel that, people who've bought a new S shouldn't look down their nose at the 3. The 3 is a tremendous car. We don't have any S's anymore. We have 3s. I like the size much better. Yeah. I wish I had a few more of the toys that were on the S, but that's not stopping me from comfortably driving my Performance 3 however I want to drive it.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way, except that Jeff is very similar to me. We do like the latest and greatest.
You guys, I mean, your wife.
I'm retired now, Johnny.
Don't get your wives on these podcasts. I need to talk to your wives.
No.
I want to bring your wives and be like,
my wife didn't even know what I paid for my first Model S.
To this day?
She does now. Okay. So I'll tell you a real quick story. So I had my car maybe a month or two. When I was getting the car, I think back then if you got a very base, because remember they came up with 40s and 60 Model S's, they were like 60 or 70 grand, maybe 80 in Canada. So I think she in the back of her head heard 80. Well, my first signature P85 was 117, I think. Yeah, something like that. Because we could buy our chargers, the HVWCs, with the car, which is really cool because then you had the 4-year warranty with it. Yeah. But we were out in the car and we pulled in to look to this furniture store, a Mennonite furniture store or something. And I pull in and we were just finishing a little power bar or something I was eating, and I see this guy driving up the highway behind me and do a U-turn and come barreling in beside me. He was driving a 7 Series BMW, and I said to my wife, this guy's pulling in because he recognizes this car. Yeah. Remember, back then, most people had no idea what it was. Signature red, beautiful color, we both love. Yeah. And he was courteous and waited till I finished my snack. Then he came over and rapped in the window, and he says, I can't believe that. Are these cars on sale now? You actually, they're delivering them? I said, yeah. He says, that's unbelievable. This is like 100 grand, isn't it? My wife looks at me like,
oh, it's more like 50.
Yeah, around there.
Give or take 50.
Right.
I think the more surprising part of that story is that a BMW owner was nice.
I got pulled over by the police in the Roadster. Very early on, I was taking my daughter into Oakville. I was on the QE near Burlington, and the police pulled us over and came in behind us, put the lights on. I said, my daughter was kind of upset, and I said, don't worry, we didn't do anything wrong. He pulls us over, comes up to us, and he says, do you mind if I take a picture of your car? We haven't seen any green plates yet. So he came out, took a couple pictures of the car, said, thanks very much, on your way.
That's nice.
And that was the
well, and remember what Job said earlier. What was the plate number?
005.
So
DVAA
005, the 5th green plate in Canada.
Wow.
So yeah, we're talking to a pioneer here, Jeff Stevens.
That's great.
Any other interesting stories you want to share with us before we move on?
Before that, I have a question.
Yeah.
From you guys.
From the newbie.
You guys are from the newbie. Question from the newbie. You've been in Tesla since like basically inception. What do you think the future of Tesla is?
I think their future is less of a car company and more of energy storage and solar. I think that's eventually going to dwarf things. I don't know if anything ever gets merged with SpaceX, but just looking at it from a consumer end, I think the potential for the solar roofs and the power walls and the power packs, even size batteries for home, is going to be where the future is. But I just hope that we still have Elon for at least another 10 years or so.
Yeah.
Because
so rich, he'll probably live forever.
Yeah,
it's getting to that point.
Well, and I'd have to agree because I mentioned again last podcast that it's become more of a technology company than a car company. But I also think that, remember, a lot of people don't think this is going to happen, but there's very little that Elon and Tesla sort of promise that hasn't happened. Maybe
True.
it takes a bit longer,
True.
but he's talking about full self-driving, and there's going to be an app where you make your car available, sort of like a Turo. So I put up a couple of button clicks on my phone. Now my car is available. Somebody out in Scarborough wants to drive my car. They click the app, and the car drives itself to that person and picks them up, and they can decide if they actually want to drive it hands-on or not. I actually think, I don't know the time frame, but I think that's going to happen.
10 years.
And you're going to see more and more of these type of things. I don't know if you're aware of this. There's a company out there called Canoo, Canoo, and it's a real funky looking car. You can't tell the front from the back. It's just like a almost like a little microbus with windows all around it. That same thing. They want them to be a subscription model and ride share and all that type of thing. And when you think about some of the latest news where the amount of calculations and the sophistication of this new hardware 3 computer, somebody just did a teardown on that car. Did you see this?
No.
And the Japanese engineer said that the other companies are 5 and 6 years behind with the technology that Tesla has in their hardware 3 computer, which is basically for autopilot.
And they're going to stay that way because Tesla's going to keep going leaps and bounds because for whatever reason, and maybe it's because they pay their guys well, but they have some of the best engineers, UX designers, and everything. I love UX. I love iPhones. I love things like buttons and tech and things like that. And for a fledgling car company to have those types of people on staff is actually unheard of.
Well, and they started at the right pace. Whether they went from Autopilot 1 to Autopilot 2 to Autopilot 3, they upgraded the computers. And as someone said today, I was listening to another podcast, and they said so that's the computer, but the big advantage is probably the software, the capability of the software and the sophistication, and the fact that all our cars talk to the so-called mothership. So all of the the neural net and everything that happens when we're on autopilot or even not on autopilot, that can send back to the mothership to help refine autopilot and that type of thing.
I am scared of that though a little bit. There's a camera in my cab. I wonder if Elon's watching me pick my nose or whatever. I don't know. There's a camera looking at me at all times.
Elon's just looking. Look at these 150,000 owners all at the same time. I don't think it's Elon.
There's a staff of people just checking out cameras. I'm sorry if you call me picking my nose.
That's okay.
Here's another not really question, but I don't know. I'm just gonna say it. As the cars that you keep driving, you're upgrading. When you finally got into a full self-driving car, or the first one that you got into that actually started driving itself, how did you feel?
It took a leap of faith. To be honest with you, the first time I had it in my car, didn't use it. The first time I was in a vehicle that was actually being driven was in your Model X when we were going down to Toronto to see a hockey game. It was. Yeah. And I tell you, you're talking away and your hands are going all over the place. I'm hanging onto the door handle while slowing down into traffic. Yeah. But it took a good hour to for that leap. There's no question it's a leap of faith. And it'll be another huge leap of faith when you don't have to keep your hands.
Go fully autonomous.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
but it's the back seat in theory. Yeah.
But watch Netflix all the way there.
Yeah. Just like when learning to drive with the one pedal, it's not an insurmountable task for most people. And once you get used to it, I think it'll probably be very enjoyable.
Cool. Well, I mean, I have many friends and relatives that we take my car to go to a hockey game or a baseball game or something downtown. And after a while, they just get used to it. Now, Jeff's exaggerating a little bit. My hands aren't going all over the place, but a little bit.
I believe him.
And now, frankly, I don't know if you've noticed this or yourself. Do you have autopilot on your car?
I do have not full self, but autopilot. Yeah.
Right. Is that the nag seems even more often. I think I timed it. I thought it was 45 seconds.
Not.
It seems to be 30 seconds now.
I'm going to time it on my way home for a whole week just to see if it actually does fluctuate depending on. I think it changes depending if you've passed a truck, if you're coming up to a turn, if it's
I thought it changed based on if you're highway driving or stop and go. It's stop and go is fabulous,
Yeah.
But
it does. I do. I think you're right.
But I've got a brand new, by the way, again from my last podcast, I physically picked up my new, we're deviating a little bit here, but my new Model X, it's got Autopilot 3, it's a Raven, but it seems to be less. I haven't noticed any difference whether it be stop and go. It's only about 30 seconds. And by the way, I will say this, I had a 16 signature, so one of the very first Model X's, huge difference in 4 years. Smoother, quieter. The new Raven suspension is unbelievable. The seats, even the controls, to move your transmission lever and your turn signal are smoother and more precise. Amazing changes within 4 years.
This podcast?
Maybe.
I just want to see if it's the same. What's the difference between full self-drive? What's the 3 have?
Well, you have traffic-aware cruise control, I think. unless you paid the extra big bucks.
I did not.
And you keep on talking about you're cheap.
So, $10,000. That's not cheap.
That's
10
okay.
Gs,
That's
man.
okay. So you don't have autopilot.
No.
You have capability. You could turn it on if you want to spend the $9,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
But you have traffic aware cruise control, I believe, where it will follow the car in front of you. It'll slow down and stop and move from a stop. It just won't change lanes.
Even
it won't
that's
do the
amazing,
full self parking and all that stuff.
It's unreal. That even like on a lower level, I call it a poor man's Tesla. John hates it, but it's what it is.
Hate it? It's real.
And you still get all the good stuff.
No, when we picked up our first two Model 3s the first week of June last year, we didn't order FSD on either of them. Now, we did add it to my wife's car because she really missed the traffic aware cruise control. You just had the regular cruise, and she missed that to the point when they put it on sale, I think, for about $5,000 or so. We broke down and did it.
The challenge is, though, there's people who don't even have traffic aware cruise control, like you said, and they won't ever get it unless they spend the full $1,000 or for the full $9,000, to get full self-driving. Now, when you get a 3 or a Model Y, it comes with traffic aware cruise control standard. So there's so many different iterations out there. It's pretty.
And that's why you get we go back to the leasing option. Maybe that's why with the Tesla, it's probably the better option, because in 4 years you're getting new tech, new bells and whistles, new everything. That's probably why it's better.
Back to leasing again, but
excellent.
So that's about it. Jeff, I really want to thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Hopefully everybody saw some benefit of having someone like Jeff in our early Pioneer and Roadster days. And if you don't know much about it, you can elaborate on Jeff's stories by looking on the internet. It's all there. You can see Jeff and his Roadster on the internet. You can learn about the history of the Roadster on the internet. All the things we're talking about are all there. But again, thank you very much. And also, thank you very much for being part of the club since day one.
My pleasure. Thank you, John.
Thanks a lot. Last question for Jeff before he goes. Are you going to get the new Roadster when it comes out?
No. If the Canadian dollar comes back to par, I might think about it. But the thought of losing $60,000 to exchange, no, that would keep me up.
I think is it 300? I think.
Yeah, 300,000.
Unbelievable.
2.9?
Yeah, but that's based on a starting price of
2.1.
That's based on a starting price of $200,000 US. So
you get a Founders. I think
that's 260,000 Canadian.
Yeah, that's
so the answer is no.
No, the answer is no. I'll let somebody else be the pioneer on that one.
And they'll let you drive it, though, I think.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm the newbie, and I'm not gonna lie. You and Jeff are badasses. You guys are cool old dudes.
Okay,
can I say that? Is that ageism?
Cool old dudes. Yeah. Well, anyhow, I appreciate it, but what I liked about this podcast, and it's very new, we're very early at this, and Josh approached me to do this, is the contrast between kid and call a newbie, but there's lots of so-called newbies. There's nothing wrong with being a newbie. And I think we want to get into that more down the road. What caused you and other people to take the leap of faith, maybe who haven't even heard of Tesla 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, to ultimately get a Model 3. And compared to someone like Jeff, who we just heard from, and someone like myself and many of the other people that had S and X and whatnot. But that's what we wanted to do, to sort of bring something new to the podcast world. And I'm really cool. I'm glad we had him on. That's a good history lesson about. I'm sure he has way more stories. I'm sure he's got tons of stories.
I like. My favorite question was, as a previous owner, where do you see the future going? And that's really cool to hear, because this guy's been a fanboy since 2008 or whatever.
And you know what I'll say, Jeff and I know each other fairly well, but I was surprised that I thought he was of an EV advocate before he decided to buy an electric car. But he wasn't. He was like me. Well, but yeah, his wife was somewhat involved in sustainability and whatnot, but he was like me. He was a car nut. And, I've been a Porsche guy and a BMW guy and all that in the past. And everybody's come to Tesla in their own way, shape, or form. Whether you were a car nut, whether you were an EV intender, whether you already had an EV like a Leaf, whether you were into climate change and green, whether you wanted to save money on gas, all the reasons, doesn't really matter. Ultimately, we've ended up with a Tesla. And some of the other advantages that you find out over time is that what makes the experience lots of fun and really great.
Yeah, today was a great episode. So, John, where can they find us online?
You can find us on Facebook. We're going to post it in the Tesla Owners Ontario Facebook group. We email this to all our members. So again, consider being a member of the club. There's lots of other advantages. You can find it on our website.
You listen to it in the car?
listen to it in the car. Yes, exactly. Just type in Tesla Owners Club Ontario. It'll come up. And our website is Tesla Owners on...
You don't know the name of your website?
I'm hungry. I'm hungry.
Acceptable.
TeslaOwnersClub.ca.
Holy. This guy needs a Snickers right away.
TeslaOwnersClub.ca, and we're on Instagram and Twitter under Tesla Owners Ontario.
And again, you can check us out at any platform you get your podcast. But here,
I made my wife listen to the podcast the other day.
And?
She started off with like, oh God, here we go again.
Yeah.
But she actually said, I said, I'll turn it off now after 10 minutes. No, I want to hear it.
There you go.
Good. Way to go.
She liked it. That's a supportive wife. I like her.
Say goodbye.
See you next time.